One last thing I wanted to touch on is, because I hear it from my end, talking to different people, different circles of friends, you'd be crazy to flip a house right now. Or there's no money to be made in real estate right now because prices are high.
Should I ask how many you've bought this year?
Go ahead. I wanted to talk about it anyway.
Exactly, that's right. So you being in the business and knowing the market, and you're not afraid to buy houses right now, right?
Not afraid.
That's
So,
right. You and I have both bought property in this market and done it not out of fear of that the market might turn tomorrow or that the market might turn next year, but instead out of taking advantage of opportunity.
Sure. So as an investor, I've bought 4 homes, one I live in, and then we're under contract on a 5th. So the opportunities for me are different than opportunities for somebody else. I'm not trying to flip or do a lot of work to the houses, but because that rental market's so strong, there's still a ton of opportunity. And now as an investor, I have somebody else making that mortgage payment or however we structure the deal. There's still plenty of opportunity. And if it were that crazy to buy something, I would have stopped after the first one this year, or the second one, or the third one, or the fourth one. I certainly wouldn't be under contract to buy a 5th. So you really just have to evaluate the numbers. I think knowing you for so long and having done so many transactions with you, I absolutely trust you to walk me through what the rental market is, what could I potentially resell it for. And so far this year, we've had a lot of success with that.
That's really the important key. So obviously, I've done this with you before, many years. I've had to undersell some houses for you way back in the day. But I guess that's a big deal too, to show that you're not afraid, that we have seen that 2007 through 2009, we saw the pain there, but this is not the same. That's a whole other conversation, but it's not, and we're not afraid of where we're at with things right now. But working with the right person, because I have never been the agent that just says, oh yeah, that's a great one, buy it.
Yeah.
Because it's the longevity of that relationship and helping somebody figure out a plan for long-term investment. So I am specific about the investors that I work with, because I want to make sure that I don't want them to lose money.
Right, well, I mean,
so
to your point, I just sent you a couple that I wanted to look at just this past weekend, and you're like, no.
Yeah,
no.
Exactly. Yes, I could sell you that.
Yeah, well,
but you're going to hate me.
Part of me still wants to go look at it, but I'm like, I got to trust you, because I really do. And you've got a unique experience too with your husband being in construction. So you kind of understand like what needs to go into that property, how much it's going to take to get it to resell or rent out. So I mean, that's one of the reasons I really value your feedback, because it's unlike anyone else in our business that you get kind of 2 different perspectives in one.
Right, and those houses are going to be different fits for different people. So, and any house in the market, you have are you going to live there? What are you going to do with this property? Is this your house to settle down to? Are you going to move in 5 years? Are you buying it for a flip? Are you buying it for a rental? And every situation is unique, and that advice then is different because those margins are different, or whether you don't need a margin. You say, I want this house and I want to live there and I can see my family there and I'm going to pay whatever I have to pay, compared to, hey, I do need to make these numbers work. So those are conversations we have to have with every buyer, and they matter. So it's not just about this one house that I'm going to sell. I hope I'm going to be, your guy, your girl forever, so.
Well, you mentioned 2007 to 2009, and it was painful for really anyone in the real estate industry. I think some people came out okay, but for the most part, it was devastating to families, realtors, loan officers. A lot of people got out of the business completely.
Sure.
This is not the same, and I think it's really important to know why. There were a lot of circumstances that led to 2007, the housing crash of that time. One of which was the financing guidelines. One really, really good thing that came from all of that is lenders have to document the ability to repay the loan.
Just sign.
And that may sound crazy, like if I'm lending somebody money, I want to know that they can pay it back. But I mentioned that underwriting guidelines are much more heavily scrutinized right now. Like, we have to really, really make sure that person can pay back the loan. And I still hear it from time to time, but well, I've got so much equity. Can't they just give me a loan based on the equity? No.
Right.
We can't. We have to document your income in some way, shape, or form to ensure that you can afford that payment and pay it back. So that's why this is so different, is because the people that are buying houses today are extremely qualified. And for the most part, they have a lot more money invested into it,
Yeah.
whether it's a larger down payment, whether they're paying cash, whatever. If you're putting a significant amount down, the likelihood of you just saying, I'm walking away from it, is very unlikely.
Sure.
So, and you're seeing more people buy to move into as well, and you can't. Where else are you going to go? You can't go buy another house, or you can't go rent because there's no inventory.
Well, and that's the other thing, is the inventory, because we did have inventory then. We did not have the inventory shortage at that time in that way. We had speculation. So people were gobbling up. You had builders who were building.
Yeah.
We don't have that. I mean, builders are just starting to feel comfortable and do it. And you had not only the big builders, but you had the little guy who was at much more risk. You know, he wasn't insulated in the same way that a bigger builder would be. And those guys lost a lot during that time. But when we talk about that even, you know, and what was lost during that time, long term, those things have shifted. I mean, it just proven fact that long term real estate is one of your best investments, period. And nobody can really, you know, talk us out of that, just is. So, you know, the best thing, I think, is to not wait, to just jump in now. I mean, I know from my own experience, I tell the story all the time, and I will always continue to, but Josh and I have never rented. We rented for 6 months while we built a house, but we jumped in and bought our first house at 22. And had we rented, our lives would be completely different. You know, now the number of houses and properties that we've owned all stems from that first one, you know, that we jumped in then and that we didn't stick ourselves. I remember driving around and thinking, because the market was tough then, it was 2005, and we only got to look at 5 houses that even before we bought, because there was no inventory really. And I remember driving around and looking at these new like trailers, like in a park, you know, and you're young and it's like, oh, that's so nice, you know, maybe we should do that. I think back to that, and that decision would have really changed the trajectory of our entire life, because we instead jumped in and took the risk on real estate. So to anybody out there who is renting or and holding out as if they think that something's going to change, it's the longevity, it's the long-term gain that you get from being in real estate.
Yeah. Well, the complete opposite. So you jumped in and did it. So my wife and I have rented. We decided to rent in 2012 when we lived in Detroit because we didn't want to buy. We were uncertain of the market, and the complete opposite. Had we made a different decision and bought, look at what property values are now in Detroit compared to where they were in 2012. Completely different decision. Yours was for the better. Ours was not so much. Like I'm thinking, I kick myself all the time. Like had we bought this when we looked at it back in 2012, and I think that that level of regret is always going to come back in some shape or form for people who decide to wait it out or rent. Historically, real estate prices go up, and I know we've heard that before. It'll continue to happen. It just is what it is, with very little deviance from that. We've had some times, like we said in 2008 and 2009, but for the vast majority of time, year over year, real estate prices go up.
And that's not even talking about it as necessarily an investment. It's also because you have to live somewhere.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
You have to live somewhere.
Absolutely.
So why wouldn't you be, you know, looking for a gain in the house that you live in? And you don't have to always look for that short-term gain. You know, when somebody asks me, well, you know, I want to make sure that I'm going to have some equity. Well, what does that mean? You know, what about your quality of life? You know, your enjoyment of something. And I always say that because often people will ask me, will you just come take a look at what I'm going to do and let me know if I'm going to get my money back? And my first question is, how long are you going to live there? Because it's not dollar for dollar. It's also about your enjoyment of it. Our homes are not just an investment. We're lucky that we have that piece that we can build equity on. I mean, most things don't gain that type, that we own, don't gain that type of value, but we also get to enjoy them as our most, you know, our home.